Episode 57, Interview with Jessi Arntz, the Leather Armorer. Welcome to the Visionary Variety Podcast, where we cover cool stuff like photo, video, film, books, and technology. So switch on your brain and enjoy the show. Welcome back, listeners. We've got another awesome interview this week with our friend, Jessi Arntz. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's going to be our pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. You were on my early list of cool people that I wanted to interview for this podcast, and it's finally happening. Yay.
Yay.
So Nate and I met Jessi at a cosplay convention, I think in 2016. You were wearing your cyber armor, and I was a Jedi. Was I the Jedi that time, Nate?
You were just in your camera gear when we met, I think.
Okay. Maybe that was the first time.
Or that was day two.
They all blur together, don't they, when you go to cons?
Yeah, they really do. They really do. When
it.
you do a show for more than 3 years, it's just, it's like, wait, what year was
There's no hope,
happened?
yeah. Unless you wear unique costumes each year, that might help, but I don't. So it's really hard. Awesome. Well, you were so kind to us. Jessi showed us around the convention center, showed us where to go for good photos. It was just awesome. It was like we were like special guests or something. So that really meant a lot to us. And it's been a great relationship so far. I've done a few photo shoots of you, and I have always admired your work. And every chance I get, I brag about you online because there's no one else like you out there that does what you do.
Oh, it's funny because I say the same thing about you. Anytime I show people, no, I'm serious, like your editing and then especially the renderings and stuff that you've been doing lately have been very, very cool.
Thank you.
Always sending people in your direction for stuff.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. Nate, on our last episode, you mentioned you were going to the beach. Did that happen? And I heard you got into you got some police action down there. What happened?
Yeah, so we went down. It was super cold. Not ideal to go down to the beach. But yeah, I had my beach jacket on. And
especially this Texas weather
yeah,
lately.
It's been a hit and miss. It's like hot, cold, pretty much. Friend of the family has a motorized golf cart, and I was taking it out with my mom, and she were just, cruising around. The safety cautious person I am, I was like, oh, I'll ride in the bike lane, no biggie. So I'm just driving and we're just chilling, we're freezing, we're talking, and nobody's looking at us odd. And then all of a sudden there's like these lights. So I'm like, oh man, how long has she been following us? And I was like, it could have, for all I know, I didn't ask her, but she could have been following us for quite a bit because I didn't see her at all. So I'm just
over the golf cart.
I'm just picturing like a third person standing on the side watching this golf cart going down in a cop car following
10 miles an hour.
So we get pulled over and she's like, hi, we stopped you. And I said, we? And there was a motorcycle cop following her. So now
they got backup.
Oh my
gosh.
Backup.
Yeah. So in my mind, I see a golf cart going only so fast with a police car and a motorcycle behind. And so she smiles and she's like, yeah, you're supposed to be driving in the slow lane. I was like, oh, well, the first time I've ever done this, I've been to the beach many times, but never had the privilege of driving a motorized cart. And so she pulls ID and everything. I'm like, man, please don't give me a ticket because this is going to be awkward when I have to explain.
Hilarious.
But she didn't. She's like, y'all have fun, stay warm.
That's super nice.
I probably would have done the same thing. I don't want to drive on an actual street with a little golf cart. Like, that seems dangerous to me.
I had blinkers and everything, but still, I think I'm only going like 25 miles an hour. So
I'd rather tick off some bikers than tick off someone.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, my chances of somebody going slower than me are way better than somebody that can run over me.
I used to live on a golf course. Never drove a golf cart.
You're missing out.
What?
Let me tell you.
I know.
They're the ultimate in lazy transportation.
I agree. Luxury.
Yeah, luxury is lazy transportation.
Nice.
Well, Jessi, how has your week been? Anything interesting going on?
No, just making everything.
Whoa.
I'm usually at the same time working on several commissions, which include suits of armor. And then I've got small orders in my Etsy store. And then I have conventions and shows to prep for. This weekend, I do have a show at the Victoria Black Swan Inn. There's a Celtic festival this weekend.
Very cool.
So I'll be set up at one of their spaces on Saturday from 4 to like midnight.
Awesome. Wow, that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, it should be fun. They've wanted to bring me out to one of their shows for a while, and it's never just the timing has never lined up. So
hmm
finally, this one was perfect. So it's like, oh, a Celtic festival. What's more appropriate?
I've gone to the Texas Renaissance Festival probably 6 times in my kind of early high school days, and we always went on the Celtic Christmas weekend because that was like
Ooh,
the most
fun.
family friendly.
Hot chocolate.
There was less chainmail bikinis. They weren't gone, but there was just less, and it just worked better for our schedules. That's cool. Is it going to be anything similar to that, or I don't?
It's, I mean, a much smaller scale,
Yeah,
much smaller. Because it's really, it's not a run festival.
sure,
But yeah, they're gonna have a bunch of vendors, and I think they're having some performances and stuff outside. I
cool.
don't know if they're gonna have fire spinners or not.
Yeah, definitely a log toss, or is that Scottish?
That's Scottish. Yeah,
Oops.
I don't think
Dope.
they have the room for that.
I just offended all of our thousands of Scottish listeners out there.
Thanks, I appreciate
So
it.
many. Sorry, Scotland. Awesome. So in my neck of the woods, I have just been finishing up a few odd jobs. Like I photo and videoed a opening of a fun park, like a really big, awesome play gym with Nate. Actually, he was a big help, and that was
That
their
sounds
grand
awesome.
opening. So we shot that. I made a promo video, working on some other videos for them to promote themselves online. I
Nice.
photographed some apartment complex floor plans recently, which I've never done before. That was like super easy. And
No, I'm sure it was,
yeah,
yeah, compared to what you usually do.
there's no people involved, no like distracted children, no bored dads. It was great. There's no humans involved. So and I got a really cool job this week that I'm working on. I am photographing a wedding on May 4th, which to all us
Ooh.
nerds,
I've been watching your posts about that. That's so fun.
Yeah.
I actually have done a Star Wars wedding
Ah,
myself.
yes. What did you do? What do you mean?
So they wanted a 10
Whoa.
Mandalorian like archway to walk through.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was one of those Mandalorians.
So
And it
cool.
was a member of our local 501st unit.
Man, I want to go to a full-on Star Wars wedding one day. This is like a classy, nice wedding, but like with Star Wars influences and little details here and there. So it's not full on Star Wars.
Sure.
So it'll be a cool mix of like the typical wedding and Star Wars stuff. So anyway, one of the things she's hiring me to do, aside from photographing the wedding, is she wants to have a wedding crest made and put on a 24 by 36 canvas. So that not a
Cool.
family crest, which is like the shield with the knight's helmet and the little fleur de lis and the family name, right? And it's like some Latin saying that's a family crest. But this is kind of a different. It's gonna have the wedding date on the bottom, their name like on a flying banner like they do, and a shield and some other Star Wars stuff in the center. Yeah.
Neat.
So it's a graphic design project, but I'm using my 3D graphics to make the parts for it. So the first two things I needed to make were lightsabers. So I had so much fun modeling Obi-Wan's second lightsaber, and I also just finished Mace Windu's saber last night. And I live streamed on Facebook the creation of Obi-Wan's saber, and that went really well.
But we were so bummed not
That's
to see the
awesome.
second one.
Yeah, I didn't stream it because I didn't know if I could do it good.
But then I saw the final result, and I was like, "Dang, dude, you should
It
have."
looks great. I took my time. That's why I didn't. I did it took more than about 2 hours. But yeah, Mace Windu's saber is much more organic and it's got some curves to it, which is a little trickier in 3D modeling. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do this on my own time, not live and embarrass myself. So
I took a shot at 3D modeling like when we first got our 3D printer, and it is hard.
yeah,
Like
it's
respect. I do want to try and like actually learn how to do it.
YouTube.
Because I feel that I can think in that kind of way, in
Totally.
that kind of three-dimensional like additive way,
Yeah.
but man, it was difficult.
It's not for the faint of heart, and you got to go in knowing exactly what you're going to do and what it needs to look like. And you can't just like play around like Legos. It's not like that. You can't just
Yeah.
fool around and come out with something cool. It's like you got to be purposeful, and it definitely takes you got to build up a tool belt of techniques that you know what they do, and then you go from there. So anyway, let's get to this episode because I think it's going to be really fun. So for all those who are listening that have no clue who Jessi Arntz is, she is a cosplayer. She's a cosplay creator. She is a leather armor, as we said. She makes amazing one-of-a-kind pieces that I've never seen anywhere else, and they're beautifully made, and they're just very artfully done. So, Jessi, first of all, where can people go to see your work?
So I do have a website. My website is jafantasyart.com, but I do a lot more active posting on my Instagram and my Facebook.
Yeah.
at J Fantasy Art. I usually will try to do a post every day of what I'm working on,
Cool.
or if I have a new finished piece, or if it's just a day and I don't have anything to post, I'll, put on a cosplay photo. So there's a lot of really good content in there, and I do try to post tutorials, and every now and then I'll do live streams, and I'll be doing those a lot more often once I get my new workshop set up.
Ooh.
Because the primary reason right now why I haven't been doing very many videos is because I don't have a setup.
Well, let's start with the basics here. Where are you from and what do you do?
Well, I've been from all over the place. I'm originally from Kentucky. Well, it's true. I was an army brat, and then I was in the army, so I've lived in a dozen different locations. So I do feel that I'm a Kentucky girl, and I always will be. But I've lived in Texas since 2012, give or take, and I moved to San Antonio about 3 years ago, and I've never been anywhere like San Antonio, and I really, really like it. I don't see myself really going anywhere else.
Oh, that's good to hear. It's a great city.
It's awesome. It's diverse. It's artistic. It's everything that I like.
And there's a lot of cosplay stuff too. It's a
There
big
really
plus.
is. There are a lot of opportunities here for an artist in general. But I've built up such a following here in San Antonio that people look for me at San Japan, and people look for me at local shows or at the Wonderland Mall and things like that. Whenever there's a little event, they know which ones I usually attend. And I usually when someone purchases one of my items, because I don't just make armor, I make anything as small as a keychain or a wallet or a wristband, up to full suits of armor that have lights and smoke. So. But usually once somebody's purchased something from me, anytime they want or need anything that is leather, they'll come back.
So do you sell your stuff online? I guess you sell it through jafantasyart.com, or how does that work?
jafantasyart.com is for commissions,
Okay.
mostly, large suits and things like that. But I do have an Etsy store.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And it's etsy.com/shop/jafantasyart, or if you just look me up in the shop search.
Yeah.
And usually, like, if you see me at a show, I'll have a speckling of everything. I'll have bracers, I'll have masks, pouches, usually one or two pieces of armor. But it's more of a, hey, here's what I can make. If you want something more specific, that I can make that.
Yeah.
That's kind of how my Etsy store is too. There's a little bit of everything on there. So, but all the listings really encourage, custom orders, because that's my specialty.
So for you, which came first, the cosplaying or the making leather stuff?
Definitely the cosplay. I made my first costume when I was like 5 or 6.
Aww.
Yeah.
Did you post
And,
that? I
I
feel like I've seen that. I even think of
I
someone
did
else.
post it at one point. I need to post it again. If you go on my Instagram and you go back to probably about the middle of last year, there was a challenge that went around the cosplay community that was a 10-year, or here's me as a kid, here's me now, kind of thing for cosplayers.
I love it.
And the costume was an eagle, I think. And I made it out of butcher paper, so just brown, packing paper.
They're random.
And the photo is great. I'm so cute. But I have a little beak thing taped onto my nose, and I've got these little wings that are stubby that go around my back that flapped, that had handholds, so that I could manipulate them.
Can you remake that in leather, please?
I ought to make an eagle now and be like, all right, well, here's the before and after.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, right. But my mom always used to make my costumes when I was, for Halloween. So, I think I might have picked up on that a little bit, but I started actually cosplaying when I was in college, because it wasn't until I went straight into the military after high school. And I mean, I did a little bit of costume stuff in high school. I have pictures of me, on Halloween, but I didn't go to a convention until I was 14 or something like that. And I didn't go again until I was in college.
Oh, wow.
So I made my first suit of Mandalorian armor in 2009 when I was in college. I didn't have any help. I didn't know anyone in the club yet, because I didn't think that I could, like be in the club
Mm-hmm.
and like interact with anyone in the club until I had been approved and had an official suit. So I like reached out to my best friend's dad in Kentucky who took me to my first convention. And I said, okay, I really want to do this. And I originally wanted to do like a Boba Fett, but I kind of, I still wanted to be femme Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, okay, so the 501st only takes official, characters. But there is this splinter group because it was still a small group when I joined. I was, for example, you get numbered based on when you join. And I was Mandalorian 281. And now there's over, I want to say there's over 2,000 members.
Wow.
Yeah, I was one of maybe 24 women in the club.
Crazy.
So yeah, and I'm not active anymore, but it still holds a place in my heart. But so I started doing cosplay for charity originally.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 2011, I guess, that I got into steampunk, and steampunk led me to leatherwork.
Oh, okay, that's how it happened. Interesting.
Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite fandoms or franchises or video games?
Oh, there's so many. Okay, well, my current obsession, video game wise, is Horizon Zero Dawn.
Awesome.
It's so good. It's so good. In fact, Nick bought me. Well, actually, he didn't buy it for me. He 3D printed it for me. The parts for a spear from the game. It's like the final weapon that you get before the last boss battle, and it like lights up and it has all kinds of cool stuff.
Whoa.
So at some point this year, I'm going to find the time as my personal project to put that all together and light it up and paint it and everything.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah. Okay, other franchises that I like. Lord of the Rings played a really big part in my young adult life. So naturally, I'm a huge Tolkien fan.
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited about the new TV show that Prime, I think Prime, right, got the rights to. And it's going to take place in the Second Age, which is so exciting. Like some people are like, oh, that makes it not as good. And it's like, clearly you only read Lord of the Rings.
Now, didn't the Third Age start after the third Lord of the Rings movie or book? Or were those books in the Third Age already?
They were in the Third Age. The Second Age is like way before that. I mean, not way before it, but my theory, based on what they've released information-wise, is that it's going to be about a young Aragorn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's a Numenor, right? So he's kind of old.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they've said that that's where it's going to take place.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll see. And lots of elves, hopefully. Lots of sexy elves.
Right. Well, and during Lord of the Rings, he was 80, I think. So that gives you an idea of the time frame. So I'm a big art nerd, just so that I'm covering all my bases here. There is an artist that works for Top Cow, and he does a lot of his own original stories now. He's being able to privately publish some of his own graphic novels.
Cool.
He's got a hard to pronounce name. I believe it's, I'm not sure where he's from. I can write it out to you, but it's Steven Sajic, I believe is his name. Or Stjepan Sajic. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but anyway, he's amazing. You can find his work on DeviantArt. His screen name is Nebeziel, Nebezial. And all of his work is amazing. There's one in particular, single graphic novel. They haven't released a sequel to it yet, called Death Vigil. And it's absolutely amazing. All the characters are excellent. He's got a Dragon Rider-like series called Ravine, which is also incredible.
I'm looking at his DeviantArt right now. I really like his style.
Yeah, he's excellent.
Different. That's cool. Kind of comic booky, kind of not.
Yeah, and he's really interesting because he's really stepping us into a new age of an artistic style, which I've already seen several other comic book artists pick up on his style and draw inspiration from it, because his stuff is completely digital. And usually with comic books, there will be a penciler, an inker, and a colorist.
Oh, yeah.
And he does everything himself.
Oh, wow. He's got
all
some
in one
serious Photoshop skills.
He's amazing. Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. He's probably one of my favorite things.
Awesome.
So that was me being a nerd, an art nerd for a second.
Great.
So what characters have you created or cosplayed as?
Oh gosh, okay, tons.
Get the scroll.
Yeah, I did. So I've done 3 Mandalorians.
Wow.
2 technically, but I did a complete revamp of the original one, so it really is like a completely different suit. So I say 3. I did a Sith Lord from one of the Old Republic comics that came out when the video game was first released.
Was it Revan?
No,
I saw you,
she
Revan.
was a Sith pureblood. Are we talking about characters that I've made as cosplays for other people too? Because that adds a bunch more to the list.
Sure.
I did a Diablo 3 Necromancer.
Yeah, I shot that.
You did. And my husband's Demon Hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I helped him with that a little bit. That was mostly his work though.
Nice.
I did Inquisitor Adrastia from Warhammer 40K.
That's so great. You won an award with that, right? Or a contest?
I did. I got Best in Show at Fan Expo Dallas costume contest, but they were also holding a qualifier for a international contest, which was the Master of Cosplay international qualifier. So by winning Best in Show, I won the qualifier, and I got to go to Canada for free
That's
to
right.
compete in the international cosplay contest.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, I probably won't do it again though.
Stressful.
You made a DJ's costume. Tell us about that.
Oh man. So yes, it was a DJ based out of Thailand.
Oh wow.
So cool.
Yeah, honestly, it ended up being a little bit to my detriment. He had some complaints that didn't have anything to do with the suit of armor. It's always tricky. That's the trickiest thing with making a suit of armor. And I mean, I've made at least a half dozen in leather for me and for others. It's always tricky getting all the sizing right when you don't have someone there to build your pattern off of. So that's the main thing that I struggle with, really. But I haven't had anything not fit someone yet. So, hopefully that remains to be the case. But for the DJ armor, what was really interesting about that is that it had about 3 yards, I think, of neopixels.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it had 1 strip per shoulder. It had 8 strips in the front, and they were all programmed together to synchronize with their lights. It had 3 color settings, including like strobing settings, and the helmet had a chain of LEDs in it. It had like a dozen LEDs in the faceplate that was detachable, and the ponytail out the back, 18-inch strips, and there were 6 strips. There's a lot of neopixels.
It looked like dreads with
Yes.
like cyberpunk dreads.
Yeah.
So cool.
That was the goal. That was what I really wanted. And Nick programmed those with a waterfall effect.
Yeah.
So they would just randomly come down. It was a really, really neat effect. It's a thing with artists where, we put so much effort and work into something, we fall in love with it and put our soul into it, and we don't want to let it go. And that was really how I felt about that piece. I loved it so much.
You don't really want it, do you?
Well, but at the same time, like by the time I was done with it, I hated it because more and more kept getting added onto it. It was like, well, can you add this? Can you add this? Can you add this? Can you add this? And it was like, yeah.
High maintenance.
How mobile was he at the end?
It had to be mobile. So it came down to just below the belly button, but the bottom plate folded a little bit, so it allowed for him to bend. The bracers allowed pretty good mobility in the wrists. The shoulder pieces were small and attached to the chest piece, so he could still raise his arms.
You can't be a DJ without being able to raise your arms over
Exactly, right? Yeah, because he definitely wanted shoulders, and I was like, okay, so if we do shoulders, this is the only way it's going to work, because otherwise you're not going to be able to raise your arms at all.
Yeah.
And then there was a belt, like a thick kind of halo-inspired belt with a loincloth in the front.
Sounds like a lot of lights.
It was a lot of lights, and it was a lot of like tooling, because the whole thing was covered in tooling.
I can't even imagine the visual, like looking down through the helmet. Could he still see?
I hope so. I recommended against the faceplate, but it was a necessity. That was why I made the faceplate removable.
Yeah.
I also recommended against all of the lights, the LED lights in the faceplate, because I knew it was going. He originally wanted um, the eyes to light up, and I was like, "You will blind
Yeah.
yourself. That we
No,
can't do that."
you can't see good enough to control DJ equipment with that.
Well, yeah, and he told me he was like, "Oh, well, I'm only going to wear the helmet for the first like 10 minutes and it's pre-programmed so I don't have to do anything." And I was like,
Uh,
"Okay, I'm not going to risk your eyesight. Let's just do it this way."
What is the hardest part about working with leather?
Patterning is definitely up there. It's difficult. I know that, and I'm really good at it. It's not to say that I can't do it. I just don't like it. And I think it's mostly because it makes my brain work in a way that hurts.
mhm.
It's like solving a really poorly thought out puzzle. It's because basically, like, the way that my brain works is that, I have to look at something. I have to consider how many pieces of leather it's going to take to make it. If there's any shaping or three-dimensionality, I have to consider how I'm going to cut that pattern in a way that is sort of like pepakura,
What
which
is
is
that?
a paper craft
Mm.
that a lot of cosplayers use to make a three-dimensional object when you don't have a 3D printer.
Yeah, I think I've seen like them making patterns and cutting out and to curve. Like the end result is going to be a curved piece
Exactly.
or whatever.
It's difficult to get round shapes in leather, so shaping can be tricky. But the
Mm,
more tricky part than actually shaping, for me, is patterning something that is going to then be shaped.
mm,
Because you can't, on paper, translate something that you're going to give a shape to that paper can't replicate.
interesting.
So it's a difficult challenge that not a lot of I dare to say even leather workers, anyone that's not like a saddle maker
Hmm.
or an armor smith, might not experience. Especially some of the more complex armor, because when you get into really complex shapes, you're talking about, folding edges to, make something look like it's raised.
Hmm.
There's a lot to it that's really difficult. I'd say other part that is a little tricky, and this is only tricky when we're working on stuff where everything needs to be the exact same color, like corporate orders, things like that, where if you're working with multiple pieces of leather, a lot of times they'll stain at different shades.
Ooh.
Oh no.
And there's really not a whole lot of methods to predict how that's going to happen.
Where do you get all this leather from?
I get my leather from Tandy Leather. There's two in San Antonio,
Huh.
but they're all over. Like every major city now has a Tandy. It's gotten super popular. Like anyone that's saying leathercraft is a dying art, it's not true at all.
The store is in business.
Yeah, it's fine. Leatherwork is not dying. It's not going anywhere.
It's like mattress firms. Someone's buying their stuff. Someone
Right,
is.
right, exactly. But yeah, unlike Mattress Firm, we're not going out of sale or going out of business for 12 years and having sales
I,
constantly. I'd dare to say that the other thing that is challenging with leatherworking is figuring out pricing,
yeah. So many
because
hours.
so many hours, yeah, put into it. The materials and the tools are expensive. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
I've probably I don't know, I couldn't tell you how much money I've spent on tools, but it's been a
Oh,
lot. It's been a lot. And we just bought another sewing machine. So,
did you wear out the last one or what?
no, well, I had a manual sewing machine. I had
Oh
what
gosh.
they call a stitcher.
And a lot of your leather work, especially your cyberpunk and futuristic ones, how do you apply the textures and the details?
It's a process. And in fact, gives me a chance to plug. I'm going to be um, doing a demonstration and class. It's like a 2 hour
Cool.
class at the San Antonio Public Library on, I want to say, August 11th.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Mm.
so they'll be posting that on their calendar sometime soon, and probably putting some advertising up for it. I think they're limiting the class to 20 people. I'm not sure how they're going to be signing up for that,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's going to be a thing. So the way that it works, leathers, obviously it's very spongy. So whenever I want to put an image on leather or put a texture on leather, there are lots of texture tools that are basically metal stems with a 3 to 5 millimeter image or texture on them. And it can be anything from like a small cross to a pebble, reptilian scale texture.
Yeah.
And with those kinds of textures, all you have to do is, use your mallet, put it on a piece of granite, and tap it in, and that tool is going to leave that impression on the leather. But when you're doing complex stuff where you're creating your own images and you're illustrating on leather, which is what I love to do because I was an illustrator before I did costuming. That's what I went to college for. Basically, there's a little more involved. I draw my image on a piece of paper first. I cut out the leather or do whatever I'm going to do to put it in the shape that it needs to be in. And tooling you can only do on thick leather. A thick, untreated leather. Once a leather has been oil slicked or treated, it really can't be tooled anymore because it loses its sponginess.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you're basically hammering in sharp edges that make up these shapes and details, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like a chisel.
Well, there's a swivel knife that is basically a small chisel that you cut your lines in with. So if you're doing edge lines or any kind of details, or you want to bring a shape out of the leather and make it look more three-dimensional than it is, you basically draw it on and then take the swivel knife and you cut that image. And the swivel knife is not a sharp knife made for cutting. It's a thick, wide knife made for gouging. And it basically splits open the leather and keeps it open, but it doesn't cut very deeply so as to sever the pieces.
Wow.
So the knife works a lot like a chisel. And then from there, you can use all kinds of different bevelers and sculpting spoons.
Sounds like a doctor.
It's definitely a mix of sculpting and drawing.
I can see that. Wow.
Have you ever been injured doing all this?
Oh, yeah. We have a tool called a skiver. And a skiver is used to thin the leather in places, usually along the edges. And I have a very tiny one. It's a number 1 skiver. And it only has the space of about, I want to say like a millimeter or two between these two little prongs. And in between the two little prongs, it is really, really sharp because it's made to slice into leather. Basically, you put the corner of the leather in, you press the skiver along the edges, and it pulls off a little ribbon, and it rounds the edge.
Makes a bevel.
Yeah, exactly. I've jabbed myself with one of those probably 4 times. Oh yeah, and I bleed every time. Because when you get going with that, you've got to put a lot of force into it. So if it slips off the leather, it goes right into your hand. So that's no fun.
No.
I've cut myself. I have a Damascus cutting knife that's actually made to just cut leather. And it's got a nice little hook blade on it. So I've cut myself with that. I've stabbed myself with sewing needles. I stepped on a razor blade one time. I actually kicked it with my toe. And I didn't realize what I had kicked. I was like, oh, that hurt. And I kept doing what I was doing. And I was standing on a piece of cardboard. And when I went to move, my foot stuck to the cardboard. And I was like, what's sticky? And I looked down and there was like a 2-inch like circle of blood. And I was like, oh no. And that was at my old house and there was no one home. And I had already, there was a 2-inch circle of blood. So yeah, so I hopped on I put pressure on it immediately. I hopped over to the bathroom, which was right down the hall. And I just laid there on the floor on my back, pressing tissue like into the cut, like with my foot hanging up in the air. And I was like, man, I look like an idiot right now. So yeah, there have been injuries. There have been injuries.
What a memory. Hold up, the show's not over. Stay right where you are. We just want to say a big thanks to Jessi Arntz for taking her time to be on the show. Again, you can find her online if you look up jafantasyart.com or if you look up jafantasyart on Facebook or Instagram. So definitely check out her work so you can see her artistry and the hard work that she puts into her stuff, and you can know what the heck we're talking about. So big thanks to her. Check her out. And last, before we get back to the show, I want to remind you guys, please go to our Facebook page, the Visionary Variety Podcast page, and do the questionnaire. This is a set of questions that will help us improve the podcast this year because we want to take this show to the next level and really give you guys the content that you love and that you want. So go there. I think it's 10 questions. It'll take just a minute or two. Please answer that and let us know your thoughts on our show so we can make it even better. Thanks a lot. All right, well, let's get back to the show. All right, Jessi, are there any other people in our area, let's just say in Texas, that do, cosplay-oriented leather work like you?
So actually, the only other American, like full armor suit custom maker is in Texas. His
Of
name
course they
is,
are.
yeah, his name is Sam. He lives in Dallas and he runs Prince Armories. His work is magnificent. And he's a nice guy. He is where I aspire to be. He's done work for Broadway.
Ooh.
He's done work for a few commercials for television. He's done all kinds of stuff, yeah. And I mean, he's way above me. He's got a full shop, and his suits can run anywhere from 5 to 15 grand.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Easily, I'm sure.
yeah. Oh, and it's worth every penny. It's gorgeous.
Well, when you find your niche in your artistic or professional, area, it's like at first you feel, oh, there's not enough people that are going to want this, and I won't be able to have an actual sustainable income.
It's true.
But
It's a concern. It's a constant concern
yeah,
for
you
me.
struggle with it for sure for that first period of your growth. But then once you sort of hit some momentum and your name gets out there as the person that does this thing and no one else does it, it's like it works in your favor.
It's definitely true. And, I tried so hard for so many years because I've been at this since
hmm
2012. And I tried so hard for a long time to, buy advertising and to advertise to get, followership.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of people say, networking doesn't make artists money. Their friends make them money
Yeah.
because this kind of thing spreads by word of mouth. And it's really all about being in the right circles and meeting the right people. This year, I've really just put my head down, tried to work as hard as possible and meet as many people as possible. And I'm getting into some different circles this year and outside of the convention scene. And so far, it's turning out to really be working in my favor. So, maybe you'll see my stuff at TRF this year,
Yeah.
and we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I've already gotten a few, major commissions this
That's
year. Like I
that's
said,
great.
I'm working on 2 suits of armor right now. I've got 2 or 3 others interested in getting suits of armor. So this is the first year that that's ever happened. Not to give you a false idea of my success or anything,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have a support network.
I'm sure you're going to go far because you got the skills, you've got a good, recognizable style, and I can't wait to see where you're going to go in the future because it's going to be awesome.
Thanks. I hope so.
So we mentioned some contests earlier. Have you won any contests, and where have those contests taken you?
So I have mixed feelings about cosplay contests.
Yeah, that's fine.
And yeah, and I mean, it's, I have nothing against anyone that does them at all.
hmm
It's just not necessarily for me. I'm pretty competitive, but being an artist and being someone who's very critical of myself and my own work, I've won Best in Show at 3 conventions now. And I mean, this one Fan Expo was, I did 2 last year. And they're the only 2 that I've done since 2013 or 2014. Before that, when I was first getting started in cosplay, I did a few contests here and there and I won a couple of awards, but that was when it was all for fun. I wasn't, running a business.
hmm
So last year, a friend of mine was like, oh, well, Countdown City Comic Con is a local show and they're doing a cosplay contest and there's a good prize. And we were, in the middle of getting a house and stuff. So it was like, oh, I don't think I have a chance really, because I knew that with such a high dollar prize that they were going to attract every cosplayer in Texas. But it turned out that they didn't really advertise very much because they
Oh,
wanted only local cosplayers to show up.
Nice.
And there was some good competition. There was a Fallout Nuka-Cola skin power armor, who I've seen before.
Whoa.
I know her. We've met. And there was a Freddy Fazbear from Five Nights at Freddy's
Whoa.
with like full moving lights and eyes
Whoa.
and all kinds. It was really cool. But I think, I don't know. I don't want to put in any input. I'm not sure why I got first place, but I did, which was really cool.
Hey.
And it made me feel really good about
Awesome.
myself because like it was a costume that I hadn't updated in a while. So
Mhm.
instead of doing a full new build, I only had 3 days. Um,
What cosplay was it?
it was the full suit of dragon armor that I did.
Like the
Um,
teal one and the
yes,
orange?
but not with the red feathers.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's the
I
suit of
like that one.
armor that I made before I made that stuff.
Whoa.
Yeah.
But I've never competed with that suit before. I really dislike oh, what's the term? There's a term for it when you compete in multiple competitions with the same costume. Sandbagging, I think.
Is that what that is?
That's what they
Never
call
heard of
it,
that.
yeah. Because if you have I've seen this in tons of cosplayers. If you have a really good suit, you want to make the most off of that suit. So you might
Yeah.
Yeah.
compete in 5, 6, 7 competitions, around
Goodness.
the Midwest and not get caught. Most competitions do, though, have a sandbagging clause, and they say, hey, if you've won first place at a major show with this suit or this costume, don't compete with it again. For obvious reasons. Anyway, in 3 days, I built a big old dragon sword that matched the outfit.
That's awesome. I love
And
that sword.
thank you. And I think that that was probably what most impressed the judges, that and the fact that my suit was all leather.
Yeah.
Um, but so I've done tons and tons of contests, but the loss in Canada really broke my heart.
Hmm.
I guess part of what hurt so much with the Canadian competition is that I threw myself into it. I set aside my own life for 4 months.
Hmm.
There were 4 months I didn't take orders. I shut down my business.
Wow.
To build that suit of armor, thinking, not knowing who my competition was because they didn't announce it until after they had won their qualifiers, which was all spread out. But because I threw myself into this, and I missed out on a lot of things because I was only spending time building this armor, and then I lost. It just crushed me.
Yeah.
It really
That's a
crushed
big
me, and I was like,
investment.
I can't do this again.
I really liked what you said earlier when we were talking about your marketing, attempts. You said that focusing on local crowd and making personal connections is a much more return and much more long-term value.
Oh, it's so much more valuable.
Yeah,
I
it is.
really like 2 years ago when I was really like trying to get a lot of followership. Um, I was throwing probably $90 a month at Facebook and Instagram.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh wow.
it was a
How did that
lot.
turn out for you?
Not well. I mean, I've got like
Mhm.
1,300 followers on Instagram and like 3,600 on Facebook.
Yeah.
So it didn't really give me a whole lot. It gave me like less than 10 likes a week.
Mm.
Um, and
So are
I wasn't seeing any return off of it. However, if I go do a convention locally or in Dallas or wherever,
Hmm.
and I
yeah.
give out 200 business cards, I'm probably going to end up with 10 to
50.
20 followers, after that convention.
It's funny that we're talking about this because our last episode was all about social media marketing and things to not do and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
if anyone's listening that is doing a business on Facebook or Instagram, listen to our last episode as well because you'll learn some stuff. And I love what you're saying though because this is firsthand experience and it's not coming from us.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. If you're an artist,
Hmm.
get it out there. And I've also found that putting my work on Pinterest has been super helpful.
Yeah.
Like most of my Etsy has a very cool statistical tracking system. So
Mhm.
basically, if you have an Etsy store, you can go on there in your stats and they'll tell you how many of your sales or visits are direct. Like
Oh, cool.
basically, I gave them my business card. They looked up this website and found my page,
Hmm.
in which most of mine is direct because I give out so many business cards. And
Yeah.
about 20% comes off of Pinterest, which is pretty high.
Hmm.
And then a little bit comes off Facebook and a little comes off Instagram. So it's way better to just try and get out and see people personally and show them your work and let them meet you and sell yourself along with your work.
What are your future goals with what you do?
I ask myself this question a lot.
Take over the world.
Same thing we do every day. I don't know, like right now with the way things are going, my short-term goal is to get more consignment jobs.
What does that mean? What is consignment?
Consignment is when I give my goods to another store and they sell it for me at a location and take a percentage.
Yeah, gotcha.
So most surprisingly, at the 2 biggest leather shops in TRF, most of the work there is consigned work.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah, Imperial Armories, they sell about, I think they draw from like 7 different sources.
But they have so much.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, like TRF draws like what, 30,000 people a weekend, 50,000 sometimes.
Yeah.
So clearly to keep up with the demand, you have to have a lot of product, or a lot of craftsmen. So, and I think there's like, gosh, like 7 different leather shops at TRF, and each one does different stuff. But anyway, consignment is my short-term goal. My long-term goal, honestly, I'd really like to get some Hollywood jobs, but
Totally.
I know that most of those are reserved for locals. I know that it's difficult to get gigs for Hollywood if you don't live there.
If you're not there.
Right. Yeah. So, and I mean, there are a few small-time, film opportunities here in San Antonio. I got a call from a guy. I can't say too much about it because I don't know what his situation is. From what he told me, he's going to try and, with a film he's working on, build more of a draw to San Antonio in the film industry.
Cool.
We're a city full of culture. We're a city full of very different landscapes and different cultures. And he wants to highlight that. He wants it to be more celebrated. And he also wants to bring more of that industry to our city and to the industry workers that are in this area, in the same way that Austin has increased its film industry. So I might have some opportunities through that, but I think the biggest thing is going to be for a while me just building up more of a portfolio and making more suits of armor, so that I can be seen by the right people and potentially get those jobs. But my Patreon is my other big goal. I really want to help, people learn how to do this craft. And I love inspiring people to create things. And I do a lot of other things besides leather. I do foam work, I do a little sculpting, I do some jewelry, I do this, that, and the other. I'm probably going to do like a fursuit next year. So there's just tons of things to explore in the crafting world that I feel I can help people learn.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm very passionate about, that I'm hoping to have more active in my future.
Well, I love all of that, and I'm excited to see where it's all going to take you.
Thank you. Me too.
And I can say I photographed her back when, before she was super famous. Right?
I'm always down. You know me. I'm always down for a good photo shoot.
Yep. Great. Well, thank you so much, Jessi, for taking your time to share your story with us. And hopefully we get you some new followers that will appreciate your artwork.
Thank you. I hope so. I hope that I can inspire people.
Right on. Well, that's what we're all about here. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode. Be sure to go follow her on Facebook and Instagram and check out her awesome work. And thanks for listening. You guys have a great week. If you like this show, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can also find our previous episodes there and listen whenever you want. We love to hear from our listeners, so if you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, you can reach us at tvvpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week. Oh, shoot, there's a train. Every night. I'm like 2 blocks away from a train track. Hold on.
Oh, that stinks.
You should step out with the air horn and just blow back.
Hey, I'm recording the podcast in here.
And get real Brooklyn.